On July 10th, 2018, after spending 9 unforgettable years at Real Madrid, Cristiano Ronaldo made a stunning move to Juventus. The Italian giants paid 117 million euros for the Portuguese superstar, one of the biggest transfers in football history. This move wasn't just about goals or assists, it was about boosting Juventus's global image and finally bringing home their long-awaited 3rd Champions League title. And who better to help than Mr. Champions League himself? At the time, that was likely the thinking inside Juventus's boardroom. But in the end, almost everything that could go wrong with this transfer did go wrong. The only exception? Cristiano's own performance. For a 33-year-old, he put up truly impressive numbers. Still, the damage was done. The transfer wrecked Juventus's finances, sparked debt cover-ups, got them banned from European competitions, cost them league points, and dragged them into multiple court battles. So, what exactly went wrong? Not too long ago, Juventus were part of Europe's elite. Ever since Andrea Agnelli and Giuseppe Marotta took charge in 2010, the club had been on a historic run. Just 5 years after being relegated to Serie B, they built a team that absolutely dominated Italian football, winning 9 straight league titles. And in Europe, they were often the only Italian team making it to the final stages of the Champions League. But despite all that success, Juve still couldn't compete off the pitch with the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Manchester United. A decade of trophies just wasn't enough to make them a global commercial powerhouse. That's when the idea took hold. Only one man could take them to the next level: Cristiano Ronaldo. He wasn't just supposed to deliver on the pitch. He was brought in to signal to the world that Juventus belonged at the top table of world football, that they were on the same level as the biggest clubs. When Ronaldo left Real Madrid, right after winning his 3rd consecutive Champions League, it almost felt unreal. For many, it was impossible to picture him in anything other than a white Madrid shirt. But the rumors kept coming, and eventually the deal was done. From the start, it was a bold and very expensive move. It went completely against Juventus's usual transfer policy. Marotta, who helped build the modern Juventus by finding undervalued talent and landing free transfers, wasn't convinced. He opposed the decision right away. In fact, it was Ronaldo's arrival that caused the rift leading to Marotta's departure that same year. Almost like he saw the storm coming. In an interview later on, he said the club had chosen a new path, one he simply didn't see himself a part of. The real push to sign Ronaldo came from the very top. The hope was that his star power would bring instant attention, sponsors, and investors. Some even believed his presence could help revive the entire Serie A. Sure enough, shirt sales exploded. Global interest surged. But financially, it still wasn't enough. Cristiano's transfer cost 117 million euros. And then there was his salary. Massive, especially by Italian standards. And all this for a 33-year-old, when the team needed investment in multiple areas. Many players were aging, and some key positions needed urgent upgrades. Still, Ronaldo wasn't the problem. Quite the opposite. He delivered. In just 134 appearances, he scored 101 goals and added 22 assists. Statistically, he was phenomenal. Pretty impressive, considering it was a brand new league, a brand new team, and Cristiano was already in his 30s. The problem? It didn't lead to any major success. It didn't deliver what Juventus had hoped for when they signed him. In Europe, they were knocked out by Ajax, the following year by Olympique Lyon, and in the 3rd season by FC Porto. 2 times they were eliminated in the round of 16. Only once did they make it to the quarterfinals. That same season, after 9 years of dominating Serie A, they dropped off the top spot, finishing in 4th place. And honestly, if the story had ended there, it wouldn't have been a disaster. In the worst-case scenario, Juventus would have lost a few dozen million euros. Painful, sure, but something they likely could have recovered from. But there's more to the story, some very important things I haven't told you yet. Ronaldo's massive salary and the wage gap it created only really started to hurt halfway through the second season. That's when everything went from bad to worse. Because that's exactly when the pandemic hit. Suddenly, matches weren't being broadcast like before, which meant big losses from TV deals. And with no fans in the stadiums, clubs lost millions from matchday revenue. Juventus, which had been run fairly cautiously until then, suddenly found itself scrambling to stay afloat. The first move? Freezing wages, roughly 90 million euros in total. To their credit, the players were willing to help. They gave up 1 month's pay and agreed to defer 3 others. But here's the catch. Juventus publicly claimed the players had given up all 4 months. They said the move saved the club 90 million euros. That was a lie. In truth, they only saved 20 million. The other 70 million was just delayed. The public prosecutor called it financial manipulation. And since Juventus is a publicly traded company, releasing false financial info misled investors and the market. That's not just shady, it's illegal. It falls under falsifying financial documents, which is a serious offense. Even these accounting tricks didn't always work. Ronaldo, for example, never got his deferred wages. He took Juventus to court and won. Paulo Dybala had a similar issue. The club owed him 3 million euros. He also considered legal action and demanded 50 million in damages. But the trouble didn't end with unpaid salaries. In fact, this is where Pandora's box really opened. Italian investigators started looking into Juventus's transfer activity and found that the club had been inflating player values. The most famous example? The swap deal between Arthur Melo and Miralem Pjanic. On the surface, it looked like a fair trade, but the transfer fees raised eyebrows. Pjanic went to Barcelona for 60 million euros. Melo went to Juventus for 72 million, plus bonuses. So technically, Juve were 12 million in the red, but somehow they reported a profit. How is that possible? Creative accounting. Selling a player counts as immediate profit. Buying a player, on the other hand, is spread out over the length of their contract. So on paper, Juventus only spent 14 million, but claimed 60 million in revenue. This kind of value inflation happens more than you'd think. It's hard to say what a player is truly worth. There's age, potential, contract length, and other factors. But in Juventus's case, investigators found that these tricks may have allowed them to hide up to 200 million euros in debt. Up until then, the damage had been mostly financial. But once everything was exposed, the consequences hit the sport itself. Juventus were docked points in the league. They were banned from European competitions. It was a major blow, both financially and reputationally. The entire board resigned, including club president Andrea Agnelli. Many of them were also suspended. In the 2021-2022 season, Juventus posted a record loss of 239 million euros, the biggest in Serie A history. It was their 5th straight year finishing in the red. At one point, they were in such a bad financial state, they didn't even have enough money to fire their coach. Since Ronaldo left, Juventus have finished 4th, then 7th, then 3rd. Right now, they're in 5th, and they just parted ways with coach Thiago Motta, who was supposed to lead a long-term project. Ronaldo's arrival was the first domino in a chain of events that led to everything we see today. Would it all have turned out differently if the pandemic hadn't hit? Maybe. Maybe the transfer wouldn't have been so catastrophic. But before Juventus can fully recover, it's probably going to take quite a few more years.